June, 2023. Northern Tanzania. Deep inside a restricted wildlife zone near the Serengeti ecosystem. A park ranger named Moses Kibwana pushed through thick, sunburnt grass during a routine patrol. The area was marked dangerous. A known lion's den sat behind a cluster of massive rocks. Bones from past kills were often found there. Most rangers avoided it unless absolutely necessary. But that morning, something unusual caught Moses' eye. Half buried in dust, bones, and dried mud, was an object that did not belong in the wild. It looked like plastic. He moved closer. His heart began to race. It was a camcorder. Its surface was cracked. The lens was shattered. The body was covered in dark, dried blood. Dirt filled every opening. It looked like it had been there for years. Maybe a decade. Slowly, carefully, Moses lifted it from the ground. The smell hit him immediately. Old blood. Rot. Decay. Whatever this camera belonged to, it had been part of something violent. The camcorder was rushed to park authorities. Within hours, it was transported under security to a forensic unit in Dar es Salaam. At first, investigators believed the device would be useless. Exposed to heat, rain, predators, and time, there was little hope it still worked. But one technician decided to try. He connected a power source. Pressed the button. And to everyone's shock, the red recording light turned on. Inside that broken shell, the camera was still alive. Once the device powered on, investigators searched for any identifying details. On the back of the camcorder, under layers of dirt and blood, they found something faintly engraved. A serial number. That number was traced through an international electronics registry. Within minutes, the room fell silent. The camcorder was registered to Evan Miller, a U.S. citizen from San Diego, California. A man who had gone missing in Tanzania in 2013, along with his wife, Laura Bennett. A couple whose disappearance had never been solved. A case that had haunted two American families for 10 long years. Suddenly, the impossible had happened. A voice from the dead had returned. In California, Evan's parents were eating dinner when the phone rang. In Texas, Laura's sister was finishing a late shift at work when she saw the missed call from an unknown international number. Both families heard nearly the same words. "We believe we have located property belonging to your missing loved ones." At first, there was disbelief. Then confusion. Then terror. When they were told where the object was found, inside a lion's den, both families broke down. For 10 years, they had lived with silence. Now, that silence had been shattered. Hope returned. But so did fear. Because if the camcorder survived, what exactly had it recorded? Before we go any further, tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who loves true crime. It helps this story reach more people and keeps this channel alive. Now answer this in the comments. Do you believe this camera will finally reveal what really happened to Evan and Laura? Type yes or no below. I really want to hear your thoughts. Now, let me tell you why this discovery terrified investigators. The camcorder had been sitting in one of the most dangerous predator zones in East Africa for 10 years. It survived. Extreme heat. Heavy rain. Scavenging animals. And the crushing force of time. That alone made no sense. Even more frightening, the memory card inside it was still intact. When technicians accessed it, they found dozens of video files. Some were corrupted. Some were damaged. But several were still playable. And all of them were time-stamped from September 2013. The same week Evan and Laura vanished. Investigators now realized something chilling. This camcorder had likely been present at the exact moment the couple disappeared. For the first time in 10 years, there was actual evidence. Not theories. Not rumors. Not assumptions. Real footage. News of the discovery spread quickly. Within 24 hours, it was reported in California, Texas, New York, across parts of Canada, the UK, and Australia. Online headlines read: Blood-stained camera found in lion's den linked to missing American couple. True crime communities exploded with speculation. Was it a lion attack? A staged crime? A kidnapping? A cover-up? Everyone had questions. But only the camera had answers. And investigators were about to press play. Inside a secured forensic lab, with representatives from Tanzanian authorities and members of the U.S. Embassy present, the first recovered file was opened. For a few seconds, the screen remained black. Then suddenly, sunlight flooded the frame. The African savanna appeared. The camera was clearly being held by a human hand. And then, a woman's voice laughed. Happy. Carefree. Alive. The timestamp read: September 21, 2013. 7:46 a.m. 2 hours before Evan and Laura were last seen. The camera tilted forward. And there they were. Together. Smiling. Completely unaware they were being filmed for the last time. The room went completely silent. For 10 years, the world believed Evan and Laura vanished without a trace. But now, they were alive again on screen. Breathing. Laughing. Moving. And the camera had just begun to tell their story. In the next chapter, you will learn who Evan and Laura really were, how they met in the United States, and why this one trip to Africa meant everything to them. Because to understand how they died, you must first understand how they lived. The footage from the camcorder froze on that smiling image inside the forensic lab. Evan and Laura. Alive. Happy. But before the mystery of their disappearance could be understood, investigators had to go back much further. Back to the lives they lived in America. Back to who they really were. Because Evan Miller and Laura Bennett were not reckless thrill-seekers chasing danger. They were ordinary people, with extraordinary dreams. Evan Miller grew up in San Diego, California, just 10 minutes from the ocean. He was the kind of boy who loved taking things apart and putting them back together. Radios. Old computers. Broken cameras. Anything mechanical fascinated him. His parents described him as quiet, kind, and endlessly curious. By his early 30s, Evan had built a stable life. He worked as a civil engineer, helping design highways and coastal bridges across Southern California. His job paid well, but it wasn't his true passion. What Evan truly loved was capturing the world on camera. On weekends, he filmed sunsets along the Pacific Coast Highway. Seals resting on the rocks in La Jolla. Storms rolling over the ocean. He didn't just record moments, he studied light, movement, and sound like a filmmaker. Friends called him the guy who never leaves home without a camera. And they were right. Nearly 1,300 miles away in Austin, Texas, Laura Bennett was living a very different life, but chasing the same dream of the world beyond her doorstep. Laura was creative, outspoken, and full of energy. She worked as a freelance travel writer and content blogger, writing about hidden cafes, long road trips, and solo adventures. Her friends joked that she had never met a plane ticket she didn't like. She loved old cities, new cultures, wild nature, and telling stories that made people feel like they were there with her. Laura's dream wasn't just to travel. Her dream was to share the world with someone who saw it the same way she did. She often told her sister, "One day, I'll meet someone who wants to chase horizons with me." And in 2009, she did. In the fall of 2009, Evan was sent to Seattle, Washington for a short engineering project connected to waterfront development. Laura was also in Seattle, covering a travel and technology conference for her blog. They met by accident. Both were standing in line at a crowded cafe near Pike Place Market. Evan was struggling to order because the menu was confusing. Laura made a joke about how even the coffee here sounded expensive. He laughed. They started talking. Within minutes, they discovered they both loved travel, photography, and documentaries about wildlife. By the end of the day, Evan canceled his plans. Laura postponed her return flight. For the rest of that week, they explored Seattle together, filming street musicians, riding the ferry at sunset, talking about places neither of them had visited yet. Before Laura flew back to Texas, Evan handed her his camera and said, "Here. So you won't forget me." She never did. For the next 3 years, their relationship grew across state lines. Evan flew to Texas. Laura visited California. They met in New York, Denver, Vancouver, and Paris. Every trip was filmed. Every memory carefully saved. In 2012, Evan proposed on a cliff overlooking the ocean in Big Sur, California, with the camera running. They were married later that year in a small outdoor ceremony just outside San Diego, surrounded by close family and friends. Their vows were simple. No promises of luxury. No promises of wealth. Only one promise mattered most. We will explore this world together. After the wedding, most couples talked about houses, children, and careers. Evan and Laura talked about Africa. For years, they had watched documentaries about the Serengeti, the Great Migration, lions, elephants, and open plains that never seemed to end. To them, Africa wasn't just a destination. It was the ultimate story. So they made a plan. No luxury hotels. No rushed tourist schedules. They wanted the real thing. They began saving aggressively. Evan took extra engineering contracts. Laura worked late nights writing sponsored travel content. Dinners out turned into home-cooked meals. New cars were postponed. Vacations were delayed. Every dollar collected had one name on it. Tanzania. By early 2013, they were ready. Laura attended wildlife photography workshops in Texas and Arizona. Evan upgraded every piece of filming equipment he owned. He bought a new high-definition camcorder, extra batteries, waterproof casing, shock-protected memory cards. They studied maps of Tanzania like students preparing for an exam. Laura learned pieces of Swahili. Evan memorized wildlife behavior patterns. They weren't just tourists. They were preparing for the story of their lives. Laura told her followers online, "This trip is not just a vacation. It's everything we've been building toward." Evan secretly planned to turn the entire experience into a documentary he would edit after their return. He even named the project Two Americans in the Wild. In the summer of 2013, the excitement became impossible to hide. Their apartment in San Diego filled with safari clothing, hiking boots, camera gear, travel books, medical supplies. Laura's family in Texas threw her a small farewell party. Evan's parents in California drove over with suitcases full of sun hats and protective gear. Everyone was proud. Everyone was excited. No one was afraid. Because in their minds, this was a safe, guided journey with professionals. Not a dangerous mission. Let me ask you something real quick. If you've ever dreamed of traveling the world with someone you love, comment "dream trip" below. Let's see how many people still believe in big dreams. In early September 2013, Evan and Laura packed the last of their belongings. They cleaned their apartment. They left favorite items behind. They hugged their families longer than usual. Laura hugged her sister in Texas and said, "2 weeks. Then I'll tell you everything." Evan promised his parents he would call as soon as they landed. Their flights were booked. Their passes confirmed. Their dream was finally real. 3 days before they vanished, Laura posted one last image. It showed the two of them standing inside Los Angeles International Airport, backpacks on their shoulders, passports in hand. The caption read, "From California to Africa. 2 hearts. 1 wild dream. See you on the other side." The date on that post: September 18, 2013. 3 days later, they would disappear without a trace. They kissed goodbye to their families. They boarded the long international flight. They left behind everything they had ever known. What happened to them after they landed in Africa would become one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries ever linked to an American couple abroad. The plane touched down in Kilimanjaro International Airport, Tanzania, just after sunrise. Evan pressed his camera against the window as the African landscape stretched endlessly below them. Laura squeezed his hand. They had made it. After years of dreaming, years of saving, years of planning, they were finally standing on African soil. Neither of them knew it yet, but this would be the last country they would ever step foot in. A few hours later, a dusty safari vehicle carried them deep into the wilderness toward their destination. Kifaru Ridge Camp, a private eco-safari base located near the outer edges of the Serengeti ecosystem. The road was rough. The sky was wide. Zebras crossed casually in front of the truck. Laura leaned out the window filming everything, laughing with disbelief. "This doesn't feel real," she whispered. When they arrived, the camp looked peaceful. Quiet. Almost postcard perfect. Several canvas lodges sat on wooden platforms. Campfires burned low. The sound of distant animals echoed through the air like something from a nature documentary. They checked in. And that's when they met the man who would become the last person to officially see them alive. Their safari guide introduced himself as Joseph Nkosi. He was calm, soft-spoken, in his early 40s. He wore the standard beige uniform of licensed Tanzanian safari guides. Around his neck hung binoculars. At his waist, a radio. Joseph had worked in the region for more than 12 years. That's what he told them. The camp manager confirmed it. Joseph had guided tourists from the US, scientists from Germany, wildlife crews from the UK. He was trusted, respected, recommended. Evan filmed him introducing himself on camera. Joseph smiled into the lens and said, "Here, nature is beautiful, but it does not forgive mistakes." At the time, it sounded poetic. Later, it would sound like a warning. For the next 2 days, everything went perfectly. Joseph took them on controlled safari drives at sunrise and sunset. They saw elephant herds crossing the plains, giraffes feeding at the acacia trees, cheetahs resting in the shade, and their very first pride of lions at a safe distance. Evan filmed non-stop. Laura narrated excitedly for her future blog. Each night, they returned to camp safely. They reviewed footage by lantern light. They laughed. They planned the next morning's route. To them, Africa was magical, not dangerous. On the morning of September 21, 2013, everything changed. Joseph arrived earlier than usual. He told Evan and Laura that there had been reports of rare lion activity near a restricted valley, far from the official tourist routes. He said the lions were unusually active, aggressive, visible in daylight. It was a dream filming opportunity. But there was a problem. The area was off-limits to tourists without special permission. Joseph hesitated when he explained this. Then he added, "If we go quietly and carefully, no one will know." Laura felt uneasy. Evan felt excited. The camera was already powered on. This was the footage they came for. After a brief moment of silence, they agreed. "Let me ask you right now. Would you have trusted this guide? Type yes or no in the comments. Because this single decision changed everything." At 9:14 a.m., a licensed ranger station logged Joseph's vehicle leaving the approved zone. At 10:08 a.m., a separate ranger observed the same vehicle parked near tall grass outside the restricted valley. From that moment on, everything that followed came only from Joseph's statement and the recovered camcorder footage. According to Joseph, they spotted the lions near a rocky ridge. Evan and Laura exited the vehicle briefly to film from a closer angle. The lions were resting. Not hunting. Not aggressive. Laura's voice could be heard on the camcorder laughing softly. Wind moved through the grass. Evan whispered, "Perfect shot, this is the one." These were the last confirmed images of them alive. As the sun began to set that evening, the safari camp prepared dinner. Tourists gathered. Guides returned. One by one, vehicles rolled back into camp. But one truck arrived, missing 2 passengers. Joseph stepped down from the driver's seat alone. No Evan. No Laura. Staff immediately noticed. When asked where the couple was, Joseph said calmly, "They wanted to walk a little farther for footage. I went to get help. But something didn't make sense." Time logs showed no emergency radio call. No distress signal. No warnings to the ranger stations. Yet Joseph claimed the couple had wandered off on foot in lion territory, the most dangerous wildlife zone in the region. Alarm bells went off immediately. Park authorities were notified within minutes. Search teams were deployed before full darkness. Rangers with rifles. Tracking dogs. Flashlights cutting through the tall grass. The area Joseph described was massive. And with night falling, the danger increased by the second. They shouted Evan and Laura's names. No response. The lions roared in the distance. By midnight, the search was suspended for safety reasons. No blood. No footprints leading clearly in any direction. Just endless grass. And silence. At sunrise the next morning, the second search team expanded the radius. Within 2 hours, they found something. 2 backpacks. Lying beside a dirt track just outside the restricted valley. Inside the backpacks. Passports. Wallets. Snacks. Extra batteries. Personal belongings. Everything was there. But 3 critical things were missing. Evan. Laura. And the camcorder. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No torn clothing. No drag marks. It was as if they had simply vanished out of the world. Joseph repeated the same story. He claimed. The couple insisted on walking farther. The lions suddenly approached. He panicked and fled to get help. By the time he returned, they were gone. But investigators quickly noticed problems. His timeline didn't match ranger station logs. No emergency radio call was recorded. No lion tracks leading away from the area matched his description. Still, there was no physical evidence linking Joseph to any crime. And without bodies, there was no crime scene. The disappearance made international news within 48 hours. The U.S. Embassy became involved. Family members flew from California and Texas to Tanzania in desperation. They searched. They waited. They prayed. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. With no camcorder. No remains. No witnesses. The case slowly went cold. And Joseph Nkosi returned to guiding other tourists. Free. Untouched. Uncharged. The official search for Evan and Laura ended without answers. All that remained were 2 abandoned backpacks. And one trusted guide with an unverified story. But 10 years later, the impossible would happen. Their camcorder would resurface in a place no human should ever reach. Inside a lion's den. In the next episode, the investigation explodes wide open as authorities reopen the case, confront Joseph, and uncover evidence that suggests what everyone believed in 2013 may have been a lie. Because this was never just a wildlife tragedy. This was something far darker. And just like that, the search teams found Evan and Laura's backpacks, abandoned on the dusty track. No camcorder. No bodies. No blood. It was as if the couple had simply vanished into thin air. For 10 years, their families have lived with unanswered questions, hoping for a clue, a sign, anything that could tell them what really happened. And now, thanks to one camcorder hidden in the wild, that clue has finally appeared. But what it contains will shock the world. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What do you think happened to Evan and Laura? Type your theory in the comments below. Hit that like button if this mystery has you on edge. And make sure to subscribe. Episode 2 will reveal the shocking truth hidden inside the camcorder, and you won't want to miss it. Remember, in this story, nothing is as it seems, and every frame of that camcorder could change everything we thought we knew. Because when the memory card is played, the real story begins.